Hello, good afternoon, everyone. So my name is Prashant Agrawal, and I'm Senior OpenSearch Specialist Solution Architect, and I'm joined with Sulabh.
Hey, everyone.
And we are going to talk about the migration from Elasticsearch to the OpenSearch and how DTEX has been migrating their clusters from the Elasticsearch to the OpenSearch and how they're innovating on the migration aspect of the OpenSearch dashboards. So here is a quick agenda. We are going to start with a DTEX case study, like how they have been migrating from the legacy Elasticsearch cluster to the OpenSearch, and why should you be choosing the OpenSearch. And then we will move to the migration to OpenSearch. So whenever we talk about the migration, there are two aspects. One is the data side, and one is the application or the asset side. So I'm going to cover the data migration, and then Sulabh is going to cover the dashboard migrations and the assets migration. Then we will talk about what are the key takeaways from this session, and we'll wrap where DTEX is thinking with respect to the future perspective, taking this project into by being the contributor into this particular project. And we will wrap up with the Q&A. So we'll start with a quick case study from DTEX. So let me see if this pops up.
People. And notice how much they tell us with their habits, quirks, and routines. Because behavior tells us everything. Employees are telling a story too. They're the source of intelligence you need to keep your workforce engaged, data secure, and intellectual property safe. DTEX, more intelligent, more protective, more private, more human. DTEX, the difference is human.
Yeah, so DTEX is a leading cybersecurity startup who is kind of helping Fortune 500 customers globally across NAMER, EMEA, and APJ. And they have a solution for insider risk management, which is driven by the cybersecurity framework. So when we look at the OpenSearch, so even you might be seeing searches happening everywhere, but what are the different use cases with the OpenSearch, what we see? So one is definitely on the cybersecurity space or the security analytics. That's where DTEX is building up the solutions for providing the insider risk management and also leveraging the AI for enhancing those features. So that could be related to if you want to do any sort of threat detection and correlations, or you want to do the alerting or creating the different dashboards for your security operations centers. Then we see a lot of things happening on the logs and observability space on the OpenSearch. So you might be having your SRE or DevOps team who is looking at the logs and want to find out which particular application is failing, what are the applications running slow. So that's where OpenSearch can help you to find those metrics and traces from the logs and then give you the overall insights of your systems or the application. Then third space is the traditional keyword search. This has been happening from all the industries with respect to the retails, where you have the product recommendations or the searches. Then you also have the enterprise documents, which is store and index, and then use the OpenSearch for running the searches. And then you have the metadata catalogs coming from your media, like audio, video, etc., which you use for the keyword data searching and filtering. And with the evolution of the GenAI, OpenSearch is also helping and acting as the vector database, where you can convert all of your data into the embedding, store it into the OpenSearch, and then kind of integrate it with your RAG pipelines for doing the use case such as the content generation, recommendation system kind of a use cases. So net-net, OpenSearch is kind of a Swiss Army knife, which can help you solve all the problems or the use cases what you're having. So this can be your one go-to solution which you can use for various industries and various use cases. So let's talk why would I be using the OpenSearch? So if I'm coming from the business perspective, my goal is to reduce the cost. And I don't want to deal with multiple licenses of the softwares or the tools. So this is where OpenSearch comes in, you have just one engine and you can have multiple workloads. And also you can consolidate multiple tools and save the cost over there. Then on the technical side, it has the wire compatible with Elasticsearch 7.10. So you don't have to look through changing your queries or how you are indexing the data. It will remain same as how you index into the Elasticsearch. And then it also has some sort of enterprise features which might not be open source or free in other solutions like alerting, index state management, or the ML capability. And then third one, when we talk about the community, So DTEX is also the OpenSearch Foundation members. They are helping contribute the code to the community, and they are helping a lot in terms of the OpenSearch dashboard code contributions, which definitely Sulabh is going to talk about. But apart from that, we also have a lot of active contributors from the community like SAP and Uber. Few of you might be in the room as well. And then lastly, you have different options of running the OpenSearch. You can run the OpenSearch self-managed or run it as the managed service into various clouds. And we have a different partners who provide the managed service into the various clouds as well. So now we talked about why should you be choosing the OpenSearch, because of it connects as a one tool to solve multiple problems. But how does the migration to OpenSearch look like? So as I briefly mentioned, it has two aspects. One is the data migration. So I'm going to cover the data migration part, and Sulabh will talk about the application migration. So when we look at the migration, there are 5 different steps which you need to carry forward. So these are planning, POC, deploying, then doing the migration and the cutover. So if I may ask a question in a room, what do you think would be the most critical steps over here, most time-consuming steps? Anyone in the room?
Planning.
Okay. Okay, no one is mentioning about the data migration. Okay.
I might know something about this.
Yep, okay, no worries. So let's start with the planning. And definitely planning is first step where you need to careful plan what you are going to carry forward, what you're going to take over to your new systems. And that's where it starts with accessing your current infrastructure. You need to decide what you want to carry to the next system, what data you want to carry, what metadata you want to query. So you can think of say you have a terabyte of product search data and then hundreds of terabytes of log data. So definitely you want to migrate your terabytes worth of product data to your new system, but your log data could be aging, and you might just want to migrate a few of those data to the new system, and then you can do the dual ingestion to keep kind of a sync between these two systems. Once you have those, then you need to define the security requirement, who should be having access to what kind of data. There could be some differences in the security into your source system and the target system. Then you have the ingestion architecture, which you need to plan. So this could be something if you're using the Elasticsearch, you might be using the pipeline FluentBit, Logstash, etc., to send the data to the Elasticsearch. Now with the OpenSearch, you might want to consider the data prepper, which can help you read data from various sources and then write it into the OpenSearch. And at the end, you define the migration goal. With this migration, my CFO has given me a choice, I want to save 50% of the cost after the migration. So this is what you lay out in the planning phase. The next is the POC phase. This is where you start with testing with smaller footprints. You set up a small scale test environment by loading a partial amount of data, and then you do all sort of compatibility testing with your applications and tools. So here the things could be what all necessary code changes you have to do into your end application by pointing to your new OpenSearch clusters, or removing any sort of links which could be pointing to the old clusters. And at the end, you also evaluate the performance and the scalability. So the one key takeaway from this could be after running through POC, we got to know my new system is 40% faster than the older system, and that is running at 80% of cost what we were running with the previous systems. So these are some sort of things you would be doing at the POC step. Then comes the deployment. So this is kind of setting up your target cluster, which could be OpenSearch cluster over here. You define all the different type of security measures. You define the data ingestion tool, deploy those, and make sure all the connections are working fine. So this is taking your MVP or the POV, what you built up into the POC stage, to the final stage of the deployment, where you configure the full-fledged cluster for running your data migrations. And then you also deploy the data migration. So there has been a lot of things about when you move from the Elasticsearch to OpenSearch, how do you migrate the data? So there are multiple ways of migrating the data. One is the restore from snapshot, but it has its own advantage and disadvantage. So the advantage is it's seamless. You can migrate from one version to another version. But the main thing lies in the disadvantage piece. So disadvantage is you can only go one major version to the next version for the snapshot-based migration. So like if you're running, say, Elasticsearch 5.6 or 5.x, you can only go up to 7.x. You cannot go beyond 7 onto the Elasticsearch using these migrations techniques or like restoring from the snapshot. So this is where the Migration Assistant and OpenSearch tool comes into the picture, where you can migrate the data from any Elasticsearch versions, starting from Elasticsearch 1.x to Elasticsearch 8.17 to the OpenSearch 3.2, which is the latest version today. And how does it work is like you take the snapshot of your data from your existing source cluster, then you deploy this Migration Assistant tool, which would be reindexing your data from the snapshot to your new OpenSearch cluster. So in terms of like how does it work, so it is like a self-managed, you can use it for your self-managed Elasticsearch cluster or the data what you have into the Elastic Cloud. Then it also does the metadata migration. So what does it mean is like you have an index template or the index schema being defined for your indexes. And let's say in your previous system, you are having 20 sorts, and now in the new system, you want to have 50 sorts. So then you can use this particular tool to configure the different number of sorts into your target cluster along with migrating the schema. Then it has the inbuilt monitoring and management capability. So you can track like your data migration or the metadata migration is at what stage, how much data has been migrated, how much is left, and all these monitoring metrics goes into the CloudWatch. And then at the end, I just want to highlight, since we are into the conference, OpenSearch is the open source project. So OpenSearch Migration Assistant is also an open source project. So you can contribute to that project if you find anything missing which is not supported in today. So let's look like what are the different phases of the RFS tool, which is the reindex-from-snapshot. So you configure and deploy the RFS, then you create the snapshot out of it, then you perform the metadata migration, and then you do the data migration. So I have a quick demo. So here I will show like how it works. So basically you deploy the metadata migration tool. It gives you a migration console. Using the migration console, you run a couple of commands for running the checks with respect to your cluster status and then creating the metadata, etc. So here I'm checking the console cluster, checking the connection check. So my source cluster is Elasticsearch 7.17, and this is where you cannot use the restore snapshot options over here. Then my target cluster is the OpenSearch version 2.17 over here. Once I have those things, I will show like what all indices I have into my source clusters. So I run the cat indices command, and you can see I have a couple of indices like ANT312 and so on into my source cluster, which is onto the Elasticsearch. And then if you look at the bottom, I don't have any such indices into my OpenSearch cluster. So my goal with this tool is like I run a few lines of command and all of my data gets migrated to the new system. So here if you refresh that, you can see the documents are getting updated live onto my source cluster. That means ingestions are happening over there, and it will be capturing all the new documents and new data as well. So the next step would be to create this snapshot. So by using this particular tool, you can create the snapshot, which would be taking the snapshot of all of your data which is stored into the Elasticsearch cluster. And it has, as I was talking about, the monitoring capability. So you have like a snapshot status check, like how many sorts has been taken as part of the snapshot and what all pendings. And once the snapshot status is there, there is one more thing I want to highlight is if you use the Migration Assistant snapshot check, it will take the snapshot of all of your data. But you also have an option to take your own snapshot. Once you have the snapshot, then you can run the metadata migration, which would be copying your index from your source cluster to the new cluster along with the settings. So once I run the metadata migration, it will run through it. And in the next screen, I have like in my target OpenSearch cluster, I will be having all of those indexes being created. If it in the next screen. Yes, now if I go to the OpenSearch dashboard, run the cat indices command, I see all indices has been created, but it does not have any data. Now I would run the backfill, so that is basically running the data migration tool, which would be copying the data from my Elasticsearch cluster to the OpenSearch clusters. Once I run that tool, it will start copying data at the shard level. And if I run the backfill status, you can see how many tasks are running. These are based on the easiest task. And if I run the cat indices command for my target cluster, you can see all the data has been migrated. So this has been one of the challenge for a lot of customers who are using the Elasticsearch versions past 7.10 or like 7.17 or 8.x, who are facing challenges for doing the data migration. And not only those clusters, but also the customers who are running the legacy version of Elasticsearch like 5.x, you cannot directly go to the 7.x or like to the OpenSearch. So then this tool helps you migrate the data at one go and then get all of the data migrated to the new clusters. So now we have done all the data migration. Then the final thing comes about the cutover. So this is where you define like what happens if something goes down, or like if something does not go well what you expected. Then you define those kind of process with a specific timeline and rollover plan. Then you define like at what time I'm going to cut down my system from old systems to the new system. That could be like 2 a.m. in the night, where you configure all of your jobs to cut over. And then you have some sort of a strategy to kind of roll it back if something does not go well. And at the end, you change all of your application config and point it to your new OpenSearch endpoint, do all sort of data verification, and then monitor the performance. And at the end of this cutover, you might think like, you might want to evaluate like how much cost you are saving, how does the performance is better from your old system to the new system. Next comes about the application migration, so that's where Sulabh is going to talk about that one.
Yeah, thank you, Prashant, for such a wonderful discussion on data migration. I'll be talking about application migration. And you already saw the introduction slide where we presented about DTEX and why human is a difference. I see like two people sitting next to each other. They're here. That's the fact recorded here. Like they came here with an intention of learning about migration. But what led them to be here, all the future indicators that led them to be in this room, that's the telemetry that DTEX Systems collects about every human in Fortune 500 companies in our customer base. And now you can see that the amount of data, the amount of complexity behind the data that we are tracking in our telemetry is very different in this industry, in this vertical of cybersecurity space. And now with the help of Prashant's tool, I don't have a magic wand to present as part of the application migration. And I'm hoping like this tool would be able to migrate us to the new OpenSearch dashboards. Let's talk a little bit about the application migration here. We are going to cover a demo application. Unfortunately, I won't be able to disclose you the application which we run because of privacy reasons, but we are going to cover a demo application. We are going to talk about the software components that sit as part of the demo application. I'm going to walk you through the 2-year journey of like how we went from Kibana 6 to OpenSearch dashboard, specifically 2.x version. And along with that, what is in the future for OpenSearch dashboard going forward into 3.x. And we are going to talk about a lot of internal plugins that we had as part of the DTEX ecosystem that we have been managing. And some of them, I know there are like a lot of open source contributors sitting here. If you guys want to partner with us on some of the plugin development, come talk to us after this talk. We'll be happy to have you as our like partner in this crime. And I'll have a secret slide here, like in case anyone wants to further go ahead, I'll have a secret slide for them along with takeaways. This is a typical demo application what a SOC analyst sees in their day-to-day life. Every SOC analyst is working in the form of team 24/7. They are looking at high fidelity events here. They're tracking all the active investigation and cases, and they would be managing a lot of policies around that. You will see a typical dashboard. People coming from OpenSearch dashboard would be very much familiar with like all the dashboard capabilities that OpenSearch dashboard provides. And there are like underlying events associated with the dashboards, which we call it raw events in the telemetry that I was referring to. We capture, like in some of the extensive index patterns, we might be capturing 50 to 60 dimensions within like a specific index pattern. So now you can see how much of a human behavior we capture before the event starts to happen. And this is all, we have to manage all the policies around those human behavior or all the telemetry. So that is like another dimension to how we manage the policies. This is just a representative demo. Nothing representation of the real vendor solution here. Now going back into a A real use case that we have for the DTEX system, this is a screenshot from the DTEX system capturing a specific user timeline here, which shows what is this user has been doing. You can see every activity that this user has been involved in, all the malicious and non-malicious negligent thing this user has been doing. And you can see at the bottom left, like the timeline that we have been tracking about this user, how this user's behavior went from negligent to a real malicious. Like the intention was not really there, but eventually it led us to maybe exfiltrate a data or maybe share financial information with a person who is not authorized to access. So we capture before the event starts to happen. All the software components that went behind this, developing this screen, most of the software components you might be familiar with. This is just a simplified version. But one thing very specific about us is we are not taking OpenSearch dashboard in vanilla format as it is. It is really crafted to the SOC analyst workflow. We have a micro front-end architecture where we have our own React application, and the OpenSearch dashboard application goes and sits as one of the plugins, you can say, into our micro front-end architecture. And we have got all the bells and whistles around like the back-end infrastructure, but I want to focus you guys on OpenSearch dashboard and the whole ecosystem around OpenSearch. We'll be talking deep into all these plugins that have been developed and what are the challenges that we faced and how we overcome those challenges. We started our journey with Kibana 6.8.23. It was an unsupported plugin, no security patches happening, written in AngularJS. I don't know how many people are still working on AngularJS. I don't think anyone would be at this point. Even that community has migrated to a newer version of Angular long back. And again, like very tightly coupled features. There. We moved to Kibana 7. This was like the phased migration approach that we took. We moved to Kibana 7 to try out, like, can we survive like the next incremental version? Believe me, this was the most brutal experience that we ran into. The code was rewritten from scratch, and the Git history was reset. So we could not even take any upstream changes. The language was redone. The TypeScript language was very new in the Kibana community as well. And then the code was written ground up with the whole Git history lost there. We decided to rewrite, like get rid of everything that we had in the past, start rewriting everything that we want in future. That story went, and then we moved to Kibana 7.10.2. And now this journey was a little more easier for us, where we started adapting to OpenSearch dashboard with a plugin architecture. We had all our customizations crafted in the form of plugins. And it was just a plug-and-play model. You can bring all your core plugins and start introducing or installing the newer plugins that were developed in-house at the top of OpenSearch dashboards. Good thing was our other native application was all written in React, so we could see like seamless energies where people could jump between the micro frontends and utilize the same language TypeScript in the front-end architecture. This is where we are with the most stable version of OpenSearch Dashboard 2.x at this point, while 3.x has been in the early release phase. We are already there. We have been sharing security insights with the security teams. I see like some representation here from the security team as well. And we have been working together to find out all the vulnerabilities, make this product as stable as possible. And we, as part of the cybersecurity industry, we definitely care a lot about cybersecurity and making the products as safe as possible for our customers as well as our partners. As we go into the adoption of 2.x, we have been trying to brainstorm, and I see a lot of interesting information coming from the 3.x community or the developers who have been working on 3.x. We did our own research spike to understand what does it take for us to do, and what are the business goals that we can help our customers achieve. First of all, there is a huge performance improvement. Like, I think the OpenSearch team made a tremendous progress in terms of swapping the ecosystem, the JVM versions, and the underlying infrastructure. That's huge benefit. I already hear like from a lot of people, including Prashant, there is like a 30% improvement. That means a lot for the community. And thanks for doing that and all the contributions that every open source developer did. The second thing that we see is the adoption of PPL language. A lot of people from the cybersecurity industry are very familiar with the PPL language from the past. They know how to dissect the data, how to pipe the information, and filter that out. That may make a lot of SOC analysts very comfortable. Search is one of the important aspects of the cybersecurity SOC analyst, and we want to make their life as comfortable as possible. And I already see there are discussions happening in the world where we want to introduce AI and natural language processing to parse the intent and what they are trying to achieve. That would be a game changer. So anyone who is working on natural language to be that intuitive interface for OpenSearch dashboards, you are on the right track. And we would be definitely looking forward to you and your work. Improved user experience, and there are a lot of plugins that we are going to talk about in the AI space, and we are always looking forward to that adoption. The plugins that we had developed internally, I'll go through each one in different buckets, and that will help you develop an intuition of like what cybersecurity company is looking forward to and where you can help us contribute. One was, I already was referring you about this micro front-end architecture and how we solve different business use case pivoting across different front ends. One was the customization of user experience. This is something that we had been advocating for. There are like different industries that want to utilize the dashboarding capabilities, which is super powerful. We don't want to develop in-house. We want to really utilize OpenSearch dashboarding capabilities. But in the bigger picture, we have our own application where these dashboards would be sitting, these visualizations would be sitting and displaying information. If we can get to a place where there is a very customized, curated experience, including like the brand management and the color scheme, navigation, if that can be customized, that's a huge win. Like that's a huge win to adoption for us seamlessly as we move into 3.x, as well as it would be an incentive for other applications who are trying to utilize OpenSearch dashboards. Second is Discover plugin. This has its own dedicated space because this is the plugin which was like the forefront when we were coming from the history of OpenSearch dashboard. All the raw data is visible on this plugin. We have extended filtering support there just to make the life easier. And I know like as we will go into the natural language processing where human can express in their own languages what they're looking for, the requirement for this might diminish a little bit. Additionally, we have got the customized grid option there. With every index, you have a configuration. You can go and specify, I want these columns in certain order, sorted by certain column. And that's the experience that the SOC analyst is looking for while they are triaging different use cases. In addition to that, we have got this contextual link information. Let's say if you are looking for an information and all of a sudden an IP address pops up in your data set, you want to know who that IP address belongs to. We have built this plugin where you can query external interfaces or internal space interfaces via API and get that information in a tooltip right there, like who does this IP address belong to. For an MD5 sum, you have got a malicious file sitting in your laptop. The next question an analyst will ask is, who all in this room are having the same file? I want to query that information. So the important thing is how can you make the UI more intuitive, solve customers' workflow right there in that single screen. Reporting was an interesting topic for us throughout this journey. We, in fact, did like 4 versions of reporting in last 5 years. And everyone has a different opinion on that. It's like one of those things where I've heard like extreme opinions on what reporting should be, whether it should be like what you see is what you get, or the reporting is just about data and the presentation could be very different sitting on a CEO's desk there. We have tried various different options, and eventually we have heard time and again, what they see on the dashboard is what they get, what they are looking to export here. That has been one of the prominent versions. I don't mean like that's the only way to solve the reporting plugin problem, but that's where like I feel there is a lot of scope for improvement still. CSV export, we built our own mini optimized version of CSV export outside of the reporting plugin to let the users export their data whenever they need it. And the dashboard organization. Currently, OpenSearch dashboard is listing all the dashboards in one panel. But if you look at a SOC workflow, there are like multiple personas participating. in their day-to-day activity. There could be a tier 1 analyst who has like a very different charter versus a SOC manager having a different charter and a CISO just looking for like, how's my company doing? How's my organization doing? Every dashboard is solving a different use case, a different problem. We needed definitely a better organization of curating to a role, which is logging in and looking at the dashboard. With that, someone in OpenSearch community, a product manager, asked me like a very interesting question long back. What can we do so that you don't have to build your own native application and just rely on OpenSearch dashboard to solve all your UI use cases? And that made me to think about, okay, what are we missing? Like, why that is not feasible? Anyone, I don't know like if anyone has a take on that. This is my take here. Everyone in the cybersecurity industry is trying to do 3 things here. One is they're trying to look at raw data and convert that into visualizations to identify patterns. Some people start from visualizations. They identify the abnormal behavior and want to investigate deep into the raw data. What led it to that abnormal behavior? The third vertical is something that we are solving outside of OpenSearch dashboard, and this is your opportunity to contribute. The third vertical is the data won't be static every time. You need opportunities to curate that data, to define policies around that data, to make the life of the analyst easier as the day passes. The security incident management and policy management has been the biggest vertical for us where we had to go outside of OpenSearch dashboard and solve this problem. And if you want OpenSearch dashboard to comprehensively solve this problem, the third vertical is the one. I think OpenSearch dashboard teams did pretty good job in solving the 2 verticals. The third vertical is the piece missing. There are like sub-companies in the service ticketing management system who are just focusing on the third pillar, but they are missing out on the 2. If one solution can come together and solve all the 3 problems, people don't have to look for another solution. With that, some of the key takeaways and learning. Upgrade early, upgrade often. If you are going to hold yourself from upgrading, I don't know what message you are going to deliver to your product manager after going from this talk, but believe me, upgrade early, upgrade often. That will make your life easier. Trust the community. If you have a use case, just go on an OpenSearch Slack channel and post a message. Believe me, there is someone sitting out there thinking about the same problem. And long back, like we are a startup. We were thinking about like how can 2 or 3 people contribute to an OpenSearch community? We have to solve our own use cases. But believe me, like when I went out and realized we were not just 3 people or 4 people solving a startup problem. We had like 30 people sitting right here and 300 people sitting like outside in this conference room and 3,000 people sitting in the OpenSearch Slack channel who are ready to help us and solve the same problem. So now we feel there's like a big community who is willing to help us out and solve this problem in this space. Impact is exponential. Like if you can contribute, which DTEX is already willing to accelerate, like we were literally siloed with the earlier legacy versions. And now we feel like we are a lot more empowered with the plugin-based architecture where like we have like really accelerated our innovation in last 1 year. And this is what we are looking forward to. DTEX is already a member of Linux Foundation and OpenSearch community, a very active member. We engage in roadmap discussions and feature. And we have been advocating for constantly upgrading the enterprise capabilities. Collaboration has been key. The good thing is we don't have to jump multiple hops to reach the engineer next door. It's pretty much an engineer-to-engineer collaboration that is happening. So which is like a great thing. We perform security scans constantly internally, and we share those reports with the security teams here with an intent to make this product much more secure and people can confidently use it. The contribution, we have been doing a lot of internal testing. We have been patching our product internally. We don't take the vanilla Kibana. We have the 4th version of this, so we patch it internally. We upgrade from the upstream and continuously test it in our internal environments. And we have been preparing our plugins for external release as well as we speak. Now, I would like to give a big thank you to Prashant here. Last week, there is a book that has been released, which is written by John Handler, Prashant, and another author here in this room. And this is the book that we have been looking for. I was in a partners conference, and someone asked a very interesting question, like there we have like all the information, but the sharing of that information, the educational piece is missing. And the timing cannot be that great where Prashant and the co-authors have already released a definitive guide to OpenSearch. So I would like to give like a big kudos and big thank you to the team. And I already have purchased my book. It's sitting in my Kindle, and I've started to read. And I think it has a lot of answers to what you might be looking for. With that, I would like to thank everyone attending this talk about migration journey. With me, Prashant Agrawal, we'd like to thank you and open the floor for questions.
Build your application on that versus just writing your own application from scratch, right? Because I assume you have to go through this thought process of, do we use Kibana even though, maybe 30% or whatever number is like useless to us, overhead, versus like creating something tailor-made to our workflows and what we want our users.
That's a good question. Yeah, thanks, Peter, for asking that question. This goes back to the build versus buy philosophy. We did brainstorm that extensively over years, and we thought like we were literally like a startup earlier. Like now we are like in our growth phase, so we have been growing exponentially. But earlier, like I was looking at the team, and I felt like there are like just 2 or 3 people who can build this same application from scratch. Should we build our own and take control of the whole code base? But when I looked at the community, I saw like 25 to 30 people, active contributors, like contributing every day on the application. And we felt we won't be able to match and be in feature parity. So that was the decision or data point that we took into account, where we felt like, OK, I think we need to care about adding business value at a much faster pace, and instead of worrying about some of the use cases that we might miss out on with this. Any more questions? Yeah, go ahead, please.
You had a number of different like cross-cutting plugins for like the dashboard space.
Yeah.
I guess how's the migration of all of those touch points going? Like, maybe you can tell us a little bit more about the progress you made, or.
Sure, yeah. I think, so currently the migration has been completed for our core set of plugins, and the software is already in the process of being released. We went through like a lot of brainstorming sessions, and literally the code was sitting like in between the lines in the Kibana world. We were like, let's say if you are not able to create a dashboard, we had like checks sitting right there in the code base. So the code was really penetrated into the legacy versions. With the plugin architecture, sometimes we have been expanding the capabilities of an existing core plugin and going beyond that as well. Overall, to answer your question, I think the plugin-based architecture has been like a key to our migration, where we knew like the code can be a little more extracted out. There's like soft coupling going on, and we can easily take upstream changes from 2 to, let's say, 3, and still bring in our own plugin into the ecosystem. So that migration got completed. We still have to do a little bit of testing around like how the plugins are surviving with each incremental upgrade. But it has reduced, like I would say, like maybe we have cut down on 70% of our testing work from where we were in the past, just to put like some numbers into perspective. So, and overall, like we look forward to contributing these plugins externally so that it's more managed actively by the community, including us, where DTEX can take charge of some of those plugins and make the life smoother. Any more questions on the data or application migration? All right, I'd like to thank every one of you who attended this talk. And in case you have any questions, feel free to grab me or Prashant outside of this room, and we look forward to how your journey is evolving. Thank you.